The story behind the events, far beyond the earthly realm where we dwell.
There, in the celestial domains, the Watchers, a group of angels, were assigned a crucial task by the Almighty. Their responsibility was simple yet profound: to observe humanity, to guide, and to ensure that the divine order was maintained on earth. These celestial beings, radiant and pure, were trusted with the welfare of mankind. They were messengers, sent by God to carry out a divine plan. However, as the tale unfolds, the Watchers become part of a story marked by tragedy, temptation, and a profound transformation that would shape both the heavenly and earthly realms for eternity. If you're interested in this topic and want to learn more, make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss out on future videos that will definitely surprise you. The Watchers were not ordinary angels. They were special, selected for their wisdom and strength. Yet, their celestial existence was not enough to protect them from the same temptations that human beings face. There is a haunting truth in the Bible and the Book of Enoch, a story that has remained untold for centuries, about the moment when these angels turned away from their sacred mission. As they observed humanity, something inside them began to stir. A desire arose. A forbidden yearning. For the first time, the Watchers saw the beauty and complexity of the human experience. They saw the strength, the vulnerability, and the potential for greatness in mankind. But it wasn't just the beauty of humanity that caught their attention. It was something far more dangerous. They began to crave the knowledge and experiences that the humans had. Over time, this temptation grew into something much more powerful. The Watchers, once obedient and divine, began to look down upon the earth with longing. They questioned their purpose, their existence, and whether they were truly meant to remain apart from the world they were sent to oversee. In their hearts, a rebellion began to grow. It was not long before this longing led to a disastrous decision. Led by a charismatic leader, the Watchers made a choice that would change the course of history. They descended from the heavens to earth. What had once been a divine purpose became an act of defiance. By coming down to humanity's level, the Watchers sought to interact with mankind in ways they had never done before. They began to take human wives, an act forbidden by the divine laws. This union between angelic beings and mortal women led to the birth of a new race, the Nephilim, giants who towered over men, stronger and more powerful than anything the earth had ever seen. But this act was not just an issue of forbidden love. The Watchers had brought something far more dangerous to the earth: knowledge, forbidden knowledge. They taught humanity the ways of the heavens, sharing with them secrets that were never meant to be known by mortal beings. The arts of magic, astrology, and metallurgy were passed down to men, all under the guidance of these rebellious angels. It was a gift, yes, but one that came at a terrible price. The Watchers' teachings began to shape the world in unforeseen ways. Technology, industry, and knowledge flourished, but so too did violence, greed, and corruption. The balance of the world was forever altered by these gifts. As the Nephilim grew in power, so did the tension between the celestial beings and the mortal realm. The earth became a place of great chaos, where the lines between the divine and the human became dangerously blurred. As the giants roamed the earth, they left behind a trail of destruction. Their power was unmatched, and their presence cast a shadow over the world. The Watchers, who had once been guides, had now become instigators of chaos. They had corrupted the world they were meant to protect, and it seemed there was no way to undo the damage they had caused. Yet, despite the Watchers' fall, they could not escape the consequences of their actions. The heavens were watching, and their Creator was not blind to what had transpired. The fate of the Watchers and their Nephilim offspring was sealed, but it would not come swiftly. It would take time for the wrath of God to unfold, and during that time, the earth would bear the heavy burden of the Watchers' decisions. But the question remains: why did the Watchers fall? What was it that caused them to rebel against the divine order they had once so faithfully followed? The answer lies in the nature of temptation, the allure of forbidden knowledge, and the eternal struggle between good and evil. The Watchers were not evil by nature, but they were vulnerable to the same desires that mankind faces. And in their desire to be more, they lost everything. As the story of the Watchers continues to unfold, it serves as a reminder of the dangers that come with knowledge, power, and the temptation to defy the divine order. It is a tale of ambition, of lost purpose, and of the eternal battle between light and darkness. And, as we will see in the next section, the consequences of their actions would echo through the ages, leaving an indelible mark on both heaven and earth. As the Watchers descended to earth, bringing with them the forbidden knowledge of the heavens, humanity was irrevocably changed. The teachings of the Watchers were not merely academic lessons. They were revelations that opened new doors to power, wisdom, and ultimately, destruction. The Watchers, in their desire to share their celestial insights with mankind, had unknowingly set in motion a chain of events that would alter the very fabric of the earth itself. The knowledge they imparted was not meant for human minds. It was sacred, complex, and far beyond the comprehension of mortal beings. Yet, to the Watchers, it seemed like an innocent gift, a way to elevate humanity, to share the divine secrets that had once been hidden in the heavenly realms. They taught mankind the arts of magic, an understanding of the stars and their influence on earthly events, and the craft of metallurgy, which allowed humans to create powerful tools and weapons. But these gifts came at a high cost. Humanity was not ready for such knowledge. The teachings of the Watchers were meant to remain hidden, for they held the potential to unleash chaos. Magic, in the wrong hands, could bring destruction. The mastery of the stars could lead to manipulation and control of the very forces of nature. Metallurgy, while a boon for civilization, also provided the means to create weapons of war and oppression. The Watchers had given mankind the keys to unlock these powers, but they had failed to foresee the consequences of their actions. The moment these divine secrets were passed to humankind, they began to change the course of history. Empires rose and fell at the hands of those who wielded the knowledge of the Watchers. The once peaceful world became a battleground, with humans using their newfound power to conquer, destroy, and dominate. The Watchers, in their pride, had believed they were empowering humanity, but in reality, they had set it on a path of self-destruction. One of the most dangerous gifts the Watchers bestowed upon humanity was the art of magic. Through this dark knowledge, humans learned how to manipulate the forces of nature, to cast spells that could control the elements and even the minds of others. With this power came corruption. Some sought to use magic for good, to heal and protect, but many others used it for personal gain, to control others or to summon forces far beyond their ability to manage. This unchecked power led to chaos and suffering, as magic was wielded recklessly, with no regard for the balance of the world. The Watchers also shared with humanity the secrets of the stars, astrology, the study of celestial bodies, and their influence on earthly affairs. While this knowledge could have been used to understand the natural world and the divine order, it instead became a tool for manipulation. Kings and rulers began to consult the stars not for wisdom, but for ways to manipulate the fate of their enemies and to secure their own power. The connection between the heavens and the earth, once sacred, was now tainted by the desire for control. But perhaps the most tangible and destructive gift of the Watchers was metallurgy. With the ability to smelt metals and forge weapons, humanity gained the means to create tools of war. The age of peace was over, and the age of conflict had begun. Iron and bronze were used to craft swords, shields, and armor, turning the world into a battlefield. The creation of weapons, fueled by the knowledge of the Watchers, led to endless wars, violence, and suffering. The giants, the Nephilim, roamed the earth, their strength and power unmatched, and their very presence served as a reminder of the cost of knowledge and the consequences of defying divine order. The fall of the Watchers was not just a personal tragedy, it was a cosmic event with far-reaching consequences. The knowledge they shared with humanity, while once considered a gift, quickly turned into a curse. The Watchers had opened the door to a new world, but it was a world filled with darkness and chaos. The power they had bestowed upon mankind was misused, twisted by human desires for domination and control. As the story of the Watchers unfolds, we are reminded of the age-old lesson, that knowledge, while powerful, must be handled with care. It is not enough to simply possess it, one must have the wisdom to use it wisely. The Watchers, in their pride, had believed they were helping humanity, but in the end, they had set the world on a path of destruction. The legacy of their actions serves as a warning to all who seek to unlock the mysteries of the universe without understanding the consequences of their power. The birth of the Nephilim marked the most visible and terrifying consequence of the Watchers' fall. These beings, the offspring of the angels and mortal women, were unlike anything the world had ever seen. They were giants, towering over humans, their size and strength far surpassing that of ordinary men. Their very existence caused turmoil, for they were not only physically imposing but also possessed the knowledge and abilities passed down by their angelic fathers. These hybrids became a powerful force that dominated the earth, leaving behind a legacy of both awe and fear. The Nephilim were no mere giants in stature. They were beings of immense power, intelligence, and potential. With their supernatural heritage, they held the wisdom of the heavens, and with it, the ability to shape the world as they saw fit. Their strength was unmatched, and their influence over the human population grew quickly. They were leaders, warriors, and kings. Some were revered as gods, while others were feared as tyrants. Their presence in the world was a reminder of the Watcher's transgression, the irreversible blending of the divine with the human. In the Book of Enoch, the Nephilim are described as the result of a forbidden union between the Watchers and human women. The offspring of these unions were not just larger versions of humanity. They were beings of both heaven and earth, their nature an intricate mix of the celestial and the mortal. Their birth was the ultimate violation of divine law, and as such, their existence was marked by conflict, both within themselves and with the world around them. The Nephilim were not simply physically imposing, they were also intelligent and cunning. As the giants roamed the earth, they began to influence the direction of human civilization. They taught men how to fight, how to build, and how to conquer. They gave humanity weapons and the knowledge to destroy, but they also instilled in them a sense of superiority, a belief that they were the chosen ones, gifted with divine power. This belief led to a brutal domination of the human race, as the Nephilim sought to rule over the earth with an iron fist. As the Nephilim grew in power, they became the central figures in many ancient myths and legends. In some cultures, they were worshipped as gods, while in others, they were feared as monstrous beings that needed to be destroyed. The giants of the earth, their presence became synonymous with destruction and chaos. Their strength was overwhelming, and their ability to command armies and conquer lands made them virtually unstoppable. In the eyes of many, the Nephilim were a force of nature, an embodiment of divine wrath. But with their power came a price. The Nephilim were not immune to the flaws of their angelic fathers or human mothers. They too were vulnerable to pride, greed, and the lust for power. These flaws, inherent in both the human and divine elements of their nature, led to internal strife among the giants. As their conflicts escalated, so did the destruction they caused. The earth became a battleground, as the Nephilim fought not only against each other, but also against the very forces that had created them. In time, the Nephilim became a symbol of the consequences of defying divine law. They were the embodiment of what happens when the boundaries between the divine and the mortal are blurred, when power is granted without wisdom, and when the laws of nature are disregarded. Their existence served as a reminder that, no matter how powerful one may become, there are always consequences for stepping outside the boundaries set by the Creator. But the story of the Nephilim is not just one of destruction, it is also a story of tragedy and loss. The giants, with all their power, were ultimately doomed to a tragic fate. The wrath of God was swift and sure, and the Nephilim's rule was brought to an end. Their strength, once thought to be invincible, was no match for the divine judgment that awaited them. The world that the Nephilim had shaped, with all its grandeur and devastation, would eventually be destroyed, and with it, the legacy of the giants. Despite their fall, the Nephilim left behind a legacy that would endure for millennia. Their story, passed down through generations, became the foundation for many of the myths, legends, and stories that we know today. They remain a symbol of the dangers of unchecked power, the consequences of defying divine order, and the tragic fate of those who believe they can escape the laws of the universe. The consequences of the Watcher's fall were far-reaching, not only for humanity but also for the heavenly realm. As the Watchers and their Nephilim offspring spread chaos across the earth, the divine order was thrown into disarray. The Creator, who had given the angels their task, could no longer stand by and watch as his laws were violated so blatantly. The time had come for divine retribution, and the wrath of God would be unlike any the world had ever witnessed. In the Book of Enoch, it is described that God looked down upon the earth and saw the corruption that the Watchers and their Nephilim had caused. The knowledge they had imparted to humanity had led to a world filled with violence, deceit, and greed. The giants, once revered for their strength, now turned on one another, using their power to dominate and destroy. The land was soaked with blood, and the very balance of nature had been shattered. God's anger was kindled, and he knew that drastic measures were needed to restore order. The wrath of God was swift and decisive. The Watchers, those angels who had defied their Creator's will, were not spared. They had broken the sacred bond between the divine and the mortal, and now they would face the consequences. In the heavenly courts, a judgment was passed. The Watchers were to be imprisoned in the darkest depths of the earth, their punishment eternal. The angels who had once soared freely through the heavens would now be bound, unable to ever return to the light. For the Nephilim, the punishment was equally severe. As the giants roamed the earth, their very existence had become an abomination. They were not meant to exist, for they were the result of a forbidden union between the celestial and the mortal. The Nephilim, once powerful and revered, would now face a tragic fate. Their strength, which had once made them invincible, would not be enough to escape the judgment that was coming. The giants, too, were condemned to destruction. In the end, they were wiped from the earth, their bodies buried beneath the soil, their legacy fading into myth and legend. The wrath of God, as described in the Book of Enoch, was not a moment of rage, but a deliberate act of restoration. God's judgment was not arbitrary but necessary to restore the natural order. The fall of the Watchers and the rise of the Nephilim had thrown the world into chaos, and only divine intervention could undo the damage that had been done. It was a reminder that no one, not even the mighty angels, is beyond the reach of divine justice. In the aftermath of the judgment, the earth would never be the same. The Watchers, once celestial beings of beauty and power, were bound in chains, their influence on the world now nullified. The Nephilim, those giants who had walked among men, were erased from existence. But the world they had touched would forever carry the scars of their presence. The knowledge they had passed down to humanity would not be easily forgotten, and the legacy of the Watchers and the Nephilim would live on in the myths and stories passed down through generations. Yet, even in the face of divine wrath, there was a glimmer of hope. For God's judgment was not merely an act of punishment, it was also an act of mercy. By removing the Watchers and their offspring from the earth, God allowed humanity the chance to start anew. The flood, which would soon come as part of this divine plan, was not just a punishment but a cleansing, a chance for the earth to be reborn, free from the corruption that had tainted it. It was a symbol of the possibility of redemption, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. The wrath of God, then, was not simply a tale of destruction. It was a tale of restoration and justice. It was a reminder that even in the face of great rebellion, there is the possibility for renewal and growth. The Watchers and the Nephilim had fallen, but through their fall, humanity was given a chance to rise again, to learn from the past and to forge a new path toward the light. The story of the Watchers and the Nephilim is a tragic one, marked by rebellion, chaos, and divine wrath. Yet, in the midst of the destruction and judgment, there lies a theme of redemption, a theme that echoes through the pages of history and the very fabric of the universe. The fall of the Watchers and their offspring did not mark the end of their story. Rather, it opened the door to a deeper exploration of redemption, forgiveness, and the eternal struggle between good and evil. The idea of redemption, particularly for those who have fallen from grace, is a powerful and recurring theme in many religious and philosophical traditions. It speaks to the possibility of restoration, of returning to a state of grace, even after committing great wrongs. While the Watchers and the Nephilim had broken the divine laws and caused untold suffering, the concept of redemption suggests that there may still be a path toward healing, though this path would not come easily, and the consequences of their actions would never be fully erased. For the Watchers, their punishment was severe and eternal. Bound in the deepest recesses of the earth, they would never again see the light of heaven. Yet, even in their imprisonment, the possibility of redemption loomed. It was said that God, in His infinite mercy, allowed the Watchers a chance for repentance. The Book of Enoch speaks of the eventual release of these fallen angels, though this moment is still far in the future. In the grand scheme of divine justice, even the most fallen beings are not completely without hope, though redemption for them would require a profound change of heart, an acknowledgement of their mistakes, and a willingness to seek forgiveness. The Nephilim, however, did not have the same opportunity. Their fate was sealed, as their very existence was a violation of divine law. The giants, born of forbidden unions, were not meant to walk the earth. Their strength and power, once a symbol of their superiority, ultimately became their downfall. The Nephilim were erased from the earth, their legacy fading into myth. And yet, even in their destruction, there is a reminder that the path to redemption is not always linear. Sometimes, the consequences of one's actions are irreversible. Sometimes, the price for defying the divine order is too high to be paid with mere repentance. But the story of the fallen does not end with punishment. It serves as a cautionary tale, one that offers valuable lessons for humanity. For in the aftermath of the Watchers' fall, and the destruction of the Nephilim, humanity was given a chance to rebuild, to rise from the ashes of the past and create a new world. The opportunity for redemption was not only for the fallen angels, but also for humanity itself. The knowledge that the Watchers had shared with mankind, while initially a curse, also became a tool for growth, understanding, and wisdom. As the story unfolds, it becomes clear that redemption is not an all-or-nothing concept. It is a journey, one that involves struggle, sacrifice, and the constant pursuit of truth. The fallen angels and their offspring may have paid a heavy price for their rebellion, but their story also offers a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always the possibility of change. It is a call for humanity to reflect on its own path, to consider the consequences of its choices, and to strive for a deeper understanding of the balance between knowledge and wisdom. The fall of the Watchers serves as a warning to all who seek power without understanding the weight of responsibility. The Nephilim, with their extraordinary abilities, remind us of the dangers of unchecked ambition. Yet, the theme of redemption within this narrative also calls on us to seek transformation, to learn from our mistakes, and to work toward a future where wisdom and humility guide our actions. In the end, the redemption of the fallen is not just about forgiveness, it is about growth. It is about transcending the past and seeking a higher understanding of the divine order. It is about acknowledging the darkness within us and striving to find the light once again. The Watchers and the Nephilim, though fallen, remind us that redemption is always possible, though it may not come in the way we expect, and it may require more than we are willing to give. The story of the Watchers, their fall, and the birth of the Nephilim is one that has resonated through the ages, leaving behind not just legends and myths but also powerful lessons for humanity. While the fate of the Watchers and their offspring serves as a warning of the dangers of defying divine law and the consequences of unchecked ambition, it also holds valuable insights into the nature of knowledge, power, and responsibility. The Watchers' story is, at its core, a tale of hubris. These angels, once tasked with watching over humanity, chose to descend to earth and share forbidden knowledge with mankind. Their actions, though rooted in a desire to elevate humanity, ultimately led to catastrophe. The Watchers' fall serves as a reminder that power, when used irresponsibly, can lead to destruction. Knowledge, too, when misused, can have devastating consequences. The gifts that the Watchers bestowed upon humanity, the secrets of magic, metallurgy, and astrology, were not inherently evil, but they were not meant for mortals to wield. It was the Watchers' pride and their desire to give humanity these gifts that led to chaos and suffering. The Nephilim, the giants born from the unions of angels and humans, are equally symbolic. They represent the unchecked consequences of tampering with the natural order. The Nephilim, while powerful and impressive, were ultimately doomed because their very existence violated the laws of heaven. They remind us that there are limits to what can be achieved by human ambition, and when those limits are crossed, the results can be catastrophic. Their power, though formidable, was not enough to save them from the divine judgment that followed. Yet, despite the tragedy that befell the Watchers and the Nephilim, there are lessons to be learned from their story. One of the most important is the idea of responsibility. The Watchers, in their desire to share their knowledge, failed to consider the responsibility that comes with such power. Knowledge, when gained, must be treated with respect and care. It is not enough to simply possess it. One must understand its potential consequences and use it wisely. The Watchers were not evil by nature, but they were careless, and their carelessness brought ruin to both the heavens and the earth. The Nephilim's story further emphasizes the importance of balance. Their extraordinary strength and abilities were not the cause of their downfall. It was their refusal to accept their place in the natural order. They believed themselves to be superior to humans, and this arrogance led to their undoing. The Nephilim remind us that greatness should be tempered with humility, and that true power lies not in domination but in understanding and respecting the world around us. The legacy of the Watchers and the Nephilim also teaches us about the fragility of the human condition. The Watchers, despite their divine nature, were not immune to temptation and error. They were not invincible. They, too, were capable of making mistakes. This serves as a reminder that no one, not even those who seem beyond reproach, is free from the potential for failure. The fall of the Watchers speaks to the vulnerability of all beings, and the necessity of remaining vigilant in our pursuit of knowledge and power. Finally, the story of the Watchers and the Nephilim is ultimately one of redemption. While the Watchers faced eternal punishment, and the Nephilim were wiped from the earth, their story does not end in despair. Instead, it serves as a reminder that even in the face of great darkness, there is always the possibility of redemption, not just for the fallen but for humanity as a whole. The possibility of growth, change, and renewal is a core theme of the narrative. The Watchers' fall allowed humanity to see the consequences of their actions and to reflect on the path they had set for themselves. Through this reflection, humanity was given the chance to learn from the past and to strive for a better future. In the end, the legacy of the Watchers is not just about their fall and destruction, but about the lessons they left behind. Their story serves as a warning and a guide, reminding us of the dangers of unchecked ambition, the importance of responsibility, and the need for humility. It challenges us to consider the consequences of our actions and to use the knowledge and power we possess wisely. The Watchers, in their fall, have become symbols of both the potential for greatness and the peril of hubris. Their story is one that will continue to resonate with us for generations to come, urging us to remember the lessons of the past as we navigate the complexities of our own world.